Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to the first post-game reaction of the season. Lakers basketball is finally back. We finally have some actual basketball to discuss, not media day, not training camp, not whatever we're hearing in the post-games, post-practice stuff. This is actual basketball. We have actual stuff to talk about. Very exciting. Despite the result tonight was not what I think not the best start to the preseason for the Lakers, though I think we've become accustomed to them getting out to some slow starts, especially once we saw who was going to be out tonight. No Luka Doncic, no LeBron James, no Marcus Smart, no Gabe Vincent, which flew under the radar. JJ Redick had said Gabe Vincent was going to play in this game, and he did not mention him pregame that Gabe was going to be out. So no Gabe Vincent as well. No Maxi Kleber, no Adu Thero. If you guys can tell, I am not in Palm Springs. I decided last minute to audible, and I'm going to save the trip for a regular season game. So we're going to be adding another regular season game instead of heading out to Palm Springs. But shout out to everybody in the chat: J Note, Black Mamba, BC, Lego Tortoise, Brian Farmer, Connor Phillips, Not Around, Danica, G Dog, BC. I think I said everybody. All right. So it's been a minute. It's been a little over 5 months since we've done one of these. Before we get into the post-game categories, a quick reminder, just launched memberships a few days ago. We're having a bunch of people sign up. So just wanted to give a quick plug for that, and we'll have it in the show notes. Also, the Discord channel, was connecting with some people on that yesterday, and we'll be checking that daily and trying to respond to as many people as possible, including the people who sign up for the memberships. And there's going to be a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 lounge for each tier. So I want to get that out of the way. And of course, for those who are watching who have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. We're on the road to 50K subscribers. Hit 30K right before the season, want to hit 50K before the end of the season. Also put out 3 takeaways that I'm going to be getting into more in depth during the show on social media, but wanted to get something out quickly right after the game. So let's get into the post-game analysis. Lakers lose 103-81. As aforementioned, no Luka, no LeBron, no Marcus, no Gabe. So it's your 2 best players, 2 starters, potentially 3 starters, depending on what happens with Marcus, and at a minimum 4 of your top 9 guys, and then also no Maxi or Adu. So Lakers were shorthanded. I expected them to lose this game. What I did not expect, and this is going to get into my overarching thought from this game, was the, I would say, inconsistent competitiveness and the overall disorganized nature to the Lakers on both sides of the ball. They just look very rusty, and I expect that to improve throughout the course of the preseason. And one thing I need to say with all the analysis tonight, process over results, and the typical preseason caveats apply. So I do not want to overreact. I think there are some things we can properly react to. I think there are some things that confirm some of our suspicions with certain players or certain strengths and weaknesses with this team, and I'm going to get into all of that. But I just want to be clear, preseason game number 1, Lakers didn't have their 2 best players, at least 2 starters, and 4 of the top 9 players on this team. So again, factor that all into all of this. But JJ said after the game, I watched his post-game media availability. He said he told the guys he wanted them to run, to compete, and to communicate. And that continues the mantra of training camp and the preseason, which has been championship shape, championship habits, and championship communication. And I don't think the Lakers did any of those things particularly well. And it's one thing to, okay, you don't have Luka, you don't have LeBron. There are going to be stretches. Like I thought the stretches when Austin was off the floor were particularly rough offensively. And it was Nick Smith Jr. and Bronny James running the offense. And those guys are, I don't think right now, rotation level point guard, like floor generals running the show. So the offense is going to sputter a bit. They were struggling defensively. They were getting killed in transition. They're getting killed off the ball. They're giving up a bunch of offensive rebounds. So like, I get that they're shorthanded, and that's going to affect the actual performance here. But the running, I don't think we saw a lot of consistent runouts from this team and hit-ahead passes and execution in transition. I thought the running defensively was particularly bad, and they just got ran on by Phoenix. Like, they made Phoenix look like a playoff team, which it was not good from a running standpoint on either side. Like, they needed to do whatever conditioning drill they did after day 3 of camp. They need to do that now after every practice, because they did not look to be in the championship shape that they've been hyping up throughout the first few days of camp. The competition, JJ said he liked that. I think they're like giving up some of the offensive rebounds, some of the getting lost off the ball. Maybe that part of that's like communication, but I just felt like in all 3 regards, my quick read on this team is like they're behind schedule with where I think they should be up to this point. Now they have the rest of the preseason. They have 5 more games. They have 3 more weeks until the season starts. They have time to get on track and potentially even ahead of schedule. I just think right now, for as glowingly as some of the reviews have been in camp, we saw some of the positives, and I'm going to get into those. But overall, I thought this team looked like a group that had not practiced much together, that was fresh into a lot of this. And like, that is partly true, but several, like Austin, Rui, Vando, Dalton, like some of these guys have played together for multiple years. Some of these guys have played together dating back to last season. You could throw Jackson in that mix. So like, it's not like this is an entirely brand new group. And again, the offensive stuff, I give them a lot of grace, because no Luka, no LeBron. I don't expect this offense to look that good, but I expect, honestly, given some of the guys, like point of attack stuff, no Smart, no Gabe Vincent, that's going to affect that. No LeBron as a helper, but like, this group just did not look good at all defensively. And there were some highlights, but it was pretty rough defensively. And this confirms some of my priors with just my concerns with their ability to match up with even a team on paper. I think the Suns are going to be a below average offense, and they really struggled to contain their shooters and guys coming off weak side pin downs. And it was just some basic stuff that they really botched tonight. Notable performers, we got to start with Austin. He led the Lakers with 20 points in 21 minutes. I thought, like, I'm going to touch on him with one of my takeaways, so I don't want to spoil that, but 20 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, couple turnovers, 6 of 11 shooting, 7 of 7 in free throws. Rui had 11 points, 3 rebounds, just 3 for 12 shooting, struggled to finish around the basket, but otherwise was solid on both sides of the ball. RJ Davis was the standout among the bench guys, had 14 points, and I thought was the garbage time guy who came in and he was running the show and he was making plays and he was actually playing with some urgency. It was kind of reminiscent of what Quincy Oliveri was able to do last preseason with the Lakers. I thought Bronny looked more comfortable, but obviously really struggled with his shot, 1 for 12, and I think was pushing and rushing things with his shot selection. Dalton continues to be very concerning with his play, and everyone, some of these other guys I will touch on in a little bit, so I'm not going to spoil their. I guess worth mentioning, Ayton had 8 rebounds, a couple blocks. LaRavia had 7 points, 5 rebounds, but I'll be touching on those guys in a second. Stats of the night, I'm going to go with them. Like, I don't know where we begin. So overall, the Lakers had a 79.8 offensive rating. I have these advanced stats plug into the ESPN box score. So 79.8 offensive rating is like, that's just mind-bogglingly bad. They shot 31% overall, 17% on threes. They were saved by the free throw line, 29 of 37 there. But I look at 27 points conceded off of turnovers, which is ridiculous. They had 22 turnovers. Part of that's the sloppiness, not having Luka and LeBron. So again, I will give them some grace there, but they were outscored 19-6 in transition, which that to me is emblematic of them not running and them not getting out in transition, because the Suns had 16 turnovers, but the Lakers only scored 11 points off of those 16 turnovers. So you see the giant gap there, and then 48 to 22 points in the paint. And this to me was arguably the biggest thing of outside of Austin. No one was getting to the rim off the dribble. He was the only guy capable of beating his man off the dribble, getting into the paint. And then a lot of times they were collapsing. He was kicking out, and sometimes those guys would miss, or sometimes it'd be a swing, and then that player misses. Like, the Lakers didn't shoot well at all. It's just that part to me was in Hayes and Ayton missed some point blank looks that they should make. Rui, I thought he can sometimes struggle to finish through contact, but he was particularly bad tonight. I think that's probably more of a rust and rhythm thing with Rui, but 48 to 22 in the paint is inexcusable in my opinion. And then I think that is it for stats. So let's just get into the three takeaways, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Takeaway number one for me, I'm going to start positive before I get into the negative. I thought Austin was exceptional tonight, and I mentioned his stats: 20 points, 6 of 11 shooting, 1 for 5 on threes. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well from deep, missed some pull-up threes, but got to the free throw line, got downhill. And I thought the offense looked dramatically better with Austin on the floor, which makes sense because it wasn't just missing Luka and LeBron. It was also missing I would say, fourth and fifth best ball handler, floor generals in Marcus Smart and Gabe Vincent, guys who are going to be more secondary ball handlers, but will be handling the ball some. So LA did not have a lot of ball handling tonight, and I think that showed with the offensive performance. They had a 7-minute stretch in the first quarter where they did not make a shot. And it was just, it was really rough. So, but Austin, I thought really stood out as, like JJ talked about, him being in great shape and really working on his body, him having the heaviest workload in camp. And I thought that translated, where Austin was, to me, arguably the only guy that looked like ready for regular season basketball. I thought you could maybe make the case for Vando defensively, although I'll get into some of the offensive stuff a little later. But like, Austin was the one guy who I felt like you could plop into a regular season game right now and he would hold his own. Everyone else, LaRavia, I also thought was solid there, but everyone else had like these elements of rust and still figuring out a rhythm together that I thought Austin, really the only knock, I thought he over dribbled at times. And I think the playmaking could be like a little bit better, but I also think you look at the assist numbers, and to me, several pick and roll reads where guys aren't finishing as the roll men, several kick out passes where guys aren't finishing because the Lakers just couldn't hit anything. So I think I would like to see Austin's assist opportunities and what that actually looks like, because my guesstimation would be, he finishes with 2 assists, but it probably could have been 5 or 6. And then we're viewing his playmaking a little bit differently tonight. Though I think like that is the next, like, I thought there were some reads off of the dribble in the paint that he made that were pretty good, but I think continuing to get better with that. But like, he just got to his spots and dominated the offense in a way that I thought was encouraging, and in a way we've seen him do when LeBron and or Luka are out. But to me, he didn't miss a beat from the end of like, he looked like the second half of last regular season's Austin, and maybe even a little bit better in terms of his first step and just getting by guys. He had Ryan Dunn on him, who's one of the better young defenders in the league. That's a guy who has given, or the player archetype who's given Austin problems in the past. So I thought he handled that pressure well, got off the ball when he needed to. And so I thought Austin was the biggest bright spot of all by far. Like, clearly the Lakers' best player, second best player in the game behind Devin Booker. And for all the people that want him to come off the bench, it was already not going to happen. But after a performance like this, I just don't see how the talent gap between him and everyone else, like DeAndre Ayton was right there as potential third best player in the team. Rui's right there in that mix for, those guys are probably more in the 4th, 5th range, but like, they were not anywhere close to Austin Reaves, in my opinion. Takeaway number 2 is the Lakers defense is a serious work in progress. And we already knew this, and we've talked about this. This is the biggest concern with this group. I think they project as a likely below average defense. Maybe they could get into that 14, 13 range defensively as constructed, but there were some bright spots to be sure. I thought Jared Vanderbilt's Jared Vanderbilt's, excuse me, on-ball defense, like he looked like 2023 Vando, and I think that might be the most encouraging thing of all defensively for LA was he was getting into Devin Booker on and off the ball, and I thought he did a really good job of, he was pressuring 94 feet. He had a couple of deflections and steals and just causing guys to give the ball up early and just getting them out of their rhythm offensively. So that was great to see from Vando. Needs to get better with his screen navigation on and off the ball. He died on too many screens, and that's something that's like the biggest argument against him being a point of attack guy is he does struggle navigating screens, but that, and when he was able to stick on the ball, he was really, really effective. Deandre Ayton's rim protection I thought was encouraging. He had a couple blocks, disrupted or broke up in a lob, and Lakers were playing him in drop, which I thought is what we expected, made sense, but it was good to see JJ actually reduce the switching in this game. I'm curious to see if that changes with Smart and LeBron and Gabe moving forward in the preseason, but with the current personnel, they were far more in drop coverage, and I thought that was a better defensive scheme. And then Rui's off-ball activity, he did get lost a little bit off the ball in terms of rotations and helping and closing out the shooters, but he had a couple steals, a couple deflections, and I thought his anticipation in the passing lanes and making certain reads was at a higher level than it's been. Now, that was all the good defensively. The bad was basically everything else I've already gone through, where they got killed on the offensive glass. They got killed in points in the paint. They got killed in transition. They had far too many turnovers that led to uncontested points the other way. And really, it was just some basic off-ball stuff where there'd be like some sort of split action on the other side or pin down action on the other side. And the Lakers just don't have the athleticism to like, and maybe some of this is like this switching less and being a little bit more selective with that. And that's like its own learning curve. But I thought this group just looked very below average athletically. The awareness, the communication were not there. And adding LeBron is going to help as a helper and just with the athleticism and physicality. Adding Marcus Smart is going to help with the point of attack and some of the wing defense. Adding Gabe Vincent's going to help. But there was too many holes within the defense consistently that it was like, I think this will be better than this. But this, there were large stretches there where they look like the league's worst defense. And again, it's the preseason. I don't want to overreact. And I don't think I think they're going to be better than that. But that did not look like a group to me that's capable, like regardless of whatever schematics JJ wants to implement. I just did not there was too many times they were getting beat on simple things. And when it became a matter of foot speed and athleticism, they just were losing that battle time after time. So that is a big concern for me. It continues to be the biggest reason why I think Marcus Smart should start, to try to balance out the starting group a little bit with the defense. But I thought that was like my biggest concern, that there maybe is some confirmation bias with this and confirming my priors of I was already concerned with the defense. And again, I think also when your offense is better, it has an impact on your defense. You could get back, and I think there will be a compounding effect with that. I am a little concerned with what I saw defensively from this group overall, where again, some bright spots with some playmaking and some individuals, but the team defense, the collective overall, was getting beat basically everywhere. And that is concerning, to be clear. And then final takeaway, first impressions of the new guys. So mentioned Jake LaRavia, 7 points, 5 rebounds, including a couple of offensive rebounds. LaRavia was exactly what I expected. He is a connecting piece offensively. He's a glue guy. He had a couple times he dove or ran out of bounds for loose balls. He was crashing the offensive glass. He's making the extra pass. He's not forcing things offensively. He, I think, hit 1 3. Yeah, 1 for 2 on from deep. So would like to see him get a little bit more comfortable in terms of just launching it, because he is such a good shooter. But offensively, I thought he played within the confines of his skill set and was just again a player who's greasing the wheels and side to side actions and whatnot. Defensively, I thought there were some stretches I liked his defense against Booker. I think he's a guy who relies more on his footwork than anything, and footwork and IQ. So there's times where he's chasing around screens or closing out or switching on to guys, and he's holding his own. So I thought defensively he was solid. The athleticism in certain matchups is going to be a bit of an issue, but to me, he just was pretty much solid in like every aspect of the game. Not necessarily great in any aspect, but I've said he's a jack of all trades type, and I thought we saw that on both sides of the ball tonight. And he's just a useful two-way rotation player. And then Deandre Ayton, only 1 point, 0 for 2. Both, I think one might have been a short jumper. One was point blank at the rim. He missed the layup. But 8 rebounds, including a couple of offensive rebounds, an assist, a steal, 2 blocks, 4 turnovers. And the turnovers are, I've talked about this before, he actually averages more turnovers than assists for his career. And that is a concern with him, is the decision-making, the ball control. I thought he got out of sorts offensively a little bit too much and was getting stripped and was trying to put the ball down in traffic. And there's some rust and rhythm stuff with that he will work through. But I thought there were several times he drew fouls that one of them he went like his 2 free throws were because he drew a foul when they were in the bonus, and you saw the ability to try to punish mismatches. The Lakers continue to struggle with their inbound passes or entry passes to the post, and I think they need to do a better job of highlighting him and featuring him. And JJ talked about that pregame, and they didn't really do that, so that's another thing that they can work on. But with Deandre, the offensive end, I'm not too concerned. This guy has the track record of being a 15, 16 point a night guy. First game of the preseason, they didn't have Luka, they didn't have LeBron. I think Luka especially is going to unlock Deandre at a different level. Clearly the Austin Deandre chemistry is still developing, but I think for Deandre, he was involved in basically every action, whether it was a high pick and roll with Austin or some type of stack action or some type of horns action. He was always screening near the elbows or the top of the arc, and he was involved in a lot. So I thought that was a positive sign. He was rolling. Again, the timing is still being figured out, but I thought Deandre, the finishing and the turnovers were yellow flags, but I don't think long-term these are going to be serious concerns with him. The turnovers maybe a little bit, especially compared to his assists, but he's going to have better days offensively. But I thought he made an impact on the glass, clearly, in comparison to Jackson Hayes. And then also just as a player who can, just the threat of him in the post, the threat of him rolling, the threat of him diving, the threat of him sealing, I think that is going to do wonders for the Lakers offense. So those are my thoughts. Let's get into the Q&A portion here. Braden, thank you for the super chat. Yo, brate, it's good to be back. Rough game, but some bright spots. For sure. I think that there was certainly some things to be encouraged by. And again, I would say Austin's play, I thought Rui continues to find ways to be effective offensively, and I think had better stretches defensively, particularly off the ball. Vando's on-ball defense. LaRavia, I thought, fit in seamlessly. Deandre Ayton's rebounding and rim protection. And the bench was a little bit more concerning, but you're also talking about third-string guys who were forced into bench roles. Like Jackson Hayes, he had the highlight of the night with the lob on Devin Booker, but he also picked up 2 just ridiculous fouls that he did not like. He just can't help himself. He's a foul magnet, and he also had a point blank miss that I don't know. He drew a couple fouls, and he had a couple of nice contests around the rim and verticality plays, but he continues to he was Lakers were minus 18 with him on the floor, which was second worst mark on the team behind Nick Smith at minus 19. So I thought there was a big difference in the Lakers defense when Jackson Hayes was in there versus DeAndre Ayton, comparing those two. And then Dalton rebounded the ball well. So I will give him that I thought he rebounded well, and he deserves that acknowledgement. But 2 for 10, 1 for 7 on threes. I just thought it was to some extent a continuation of summer league. I thought the defense was not good once again. Bronny was forcing, and I think he's got to find a better way to pick his spots. Nick Smith needs to not inbound the ball. He had a couple of very scary inbounds passes, and he probably should not be the full-time inbounder with whatever unit he's in. And then Koloko, I thought, had some good stretches defensively, but did have 4 turnovers as well. So yeah, that was my general thoughts on most of the rotation. Ken says Dalton looks lost. Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to see the regression because he had such a promising start to the season, and I don't know what happened because I mean, of course, like I think a lot of people will point to the Knicks trade and him coming back to LA, but I feel like it started to happen a little bit even before then, where he had the opening like a month and a half where he has the 37-point performance against Utah. And we're talking about him as one of these steals of the draft and one of the most promising and encouraging rookies or, rookie debuts of that class. And it's just basically been downhill from there. And even now, like he hit a 3 late in the game where I feel like sometimes he'll kind of pad his numbers a little bit in crunch time to make them look a little bit better. Like this was this was already bad regardless of that 3, but it's hard to find the kernels of optimism with him right now. Rod says, glad to see the chat is not overreacting to one preseason game. I mean, to be clear, like, I don't know. It's tough not to overreact to the first like glimpse of basketball you get, right? Like for those, I've talked about playing fantasy football, and like the most consistent thing in fantasy football is you overreact to week 1 in positive or negative directions. I'm trying to ground a lot of my analysis or opinions from this game in reality of I think the defensive stuff will be better when they're at full strength, but I also think you can make a case like that there's a version of the group that was present that should have defended much better than they did. And like, I thought that starting group should have defended better overall than they did. And I don't like, they basically let go of the rope and gave up to open the third quarter. So I think that the spirit of this group like the first 3 days of camp were just so encouraging, and everyone was talking about how competitive it was and how just like, I don't know, it just didn't match up with what we saw. And I don't know if there was some loss of steam because Luka didn't play and then Gabe also didn't play. And it was like, they just knew they were undermanned and didn't have the full squad together. But it just, I feel like it was a little dispiriting based on what we had heard leading up into this game. And based on what JJ said, he had 3 goals for the game: run, compete, communicate. And I wouldn't say did any of those at even like an average, rate. So that was where I think things are like a little, but to be clear, I think this team is going to I expect them to look much better on October 17th, the final preseason game, than they do right now. And if they don't, then that's a different conversation, but they still need to, there's a lot more, I guess, rust that they have to knock off than I was expecting. Danica says, I did see a Suns player hesitate to take a layup because we finally had a 7-footer out there. Yeah, I thought Ayton's rim protection was really impressive, and his rim protection numbers in Phoenix and Portland were good as well. So it's not necessarily a surprise, but it was nice to see. And I thought there was a real difference between when he was the rim protector versus Jackson. Some of these comments are amazing. We are in mid-season form. Ryan says transition defense was a concern. Yeah, I mean, because that was one of the things I touched on with the conditioning portion, that JJ has really harped on the conditioning. That's been the biggest point of emphasis through the first few days of camp. And I thought certainly, like, again, I'll say this group is below average athletically. I don't think that is something that is like groundbreaking. I don't think that's an observation that we just realized after this game, that's been a thing that the Lakers Typically, their rosters over the last few years have not been as athletic as they probably need to be. But it was clear when there was some foot races, and I don't know if it was just an urgency thing. I don't know if it was a preseason thing. Maybe it was, but I believe if you're out there for the preseason, you should be playing as hard as you can within reason. And it felt like there were some stretches with that, but it also felt like there were some stretches where they were coasting. And I do expect them to have a much better performance and showing on Sunday in Golden State. I think JJ is going to have plenty of stuff to review and show them. And I think tomorrow they'll probably have a film session, or at least a shoot around film session on Sunday. And I think that there's definitely something they can, or not something, a lot of things they can be better with. Harry Chinani, what's up, Harry? Yo, Jovan, it's been a while. Hope you're well. Can you predict how many minutes per game the top 9 to 10 guys will play this season? Good question. So let's look at, so just with the starters, and JJ had said he wasn't going to play them past the third quarter. You had Austin at 21, Rui at 23, Vando at 21, LaRavia at 19, Ayton at 18. Looking at the bench, Hayes at 17. So it was almost a perfectly even split between Ayton and Hayes through the first 3 quarters. Bronny at 24, Dalton at 26. I do not expect those guys to play more than Rui and Austin. Obviously, those guys played well into the fourth. I mean, so I think that the starting lineup is going to be, if we map this out quickly here, Deandre, Ayton, LeBron, Rui, Austin, and Luka. And I think Ayton will probably be in like the 32-minute range. I think LeBron, they'll probably reduce it a little bit. Let's just say he's at around 32 as well. I think Rui will be at around 30. I think Austin will be at around 34. And with Luka, let's say 35. That is sort of in line with their minutes post Luka trade last year. Obviously, Hayes was starting instead of Ayton, so it was a much lower number, but that's in line with what Ayton has done for most of his career. LeBron, I suspect they'll shave off a few minutes. Rui's going to be in that 30-ish, might play a little bit more, but Austin and Luka were both 34 and 35 post trade last year. I expect that to continue. Then we got to Smart, I think, as a 6th man. I think LaRavia will be the 7th man. I think Vando will be the 8th man, and I think Gabe will be the 9th man. Let's just stick with the top 9. So quick math. Let's do. Sorry, this is riveting. I know. I mean, I think Smart will probably be in the low to mid 20s. I think LaRavia is going to be at around 20 or low 20s. I think Vando will probably be high teens, and I think Gabe will probably be mid teens. That would be my tentative breakdown. Then Hayes, or I'll say Hayes really left the door open for Kleba. If Kleba can get healthy in time and be a versatile defender and get back to shooting the way he shot before, I think Hayes, that like 8 to 10 minutes of being the 10th man and the backup center, I think that's really in play for Kleba. Ken says, appreciate your objective and honest views of Lakers performance and roster. Thank you. I appreciate it. Johnny Nevermind says, we look like we hadn't even practiced together. So awful. Agreed. Kane Carter, you think a Vando on a second for Royce O'Neal trade can be done? Phoenix mentioned they wanted a grit and grind style team. He fits their culture. They're trying to build. Royce would be a nice fit. I think the issue with Vando continues to be the contract length, that he's got 3 years left on that deal. I think it's going to take more than a second, at least right now. If Vando plays set, like I think there's a chance that he can play a healthy season, get back to being the old Vando, and rehab his value for next summer. But I don't think just a few quotes about how his shot looks better, and then he comes in and airballs or nearly airballs his first shot like that. That's not fooling anybody. Like the offense is still a real concern with Vando. Like nothing I saw. He was maybe a little bit more confident in like shooting, which is a positive. That's a real thing. And he had a drive where I think he got to the free throw line, but he's still like a glaring minus on the offensive end. Brian says Dalton's minutes should increase this preseason. Need to know what he's made of. I mean, he did play 26 minutes tonight, which led the team. So I think they will increase in some games. I think when this team is fully healthy and they're doing a dress rehearsal, JJ said he wants to have 2 games with a dress rehearsal, though he did say that he's not sure if LeBron will play. He said he doesn't know if LeBron's playing at all in the preseason yet, and that has not been established, and that the dress rehearsal as of right now, like, they'd love LeBron to take part in that, but it's not for certain that he will. But I think with this group at full strength in the preseason, if there is 1 or 2 games where they do that, you're going to play the top 10, I think, which does not include Dalton. At least, like, everyone's going to play at least like 12, 15 minutes just to see what that group looks like. So I think that will impact Dalton's minutes, but him being in the mid to high 20s for a lot of these games, I do agree is good for his confidence and good to just see what, if you are giving up on him and trading him at some point, or you are just burying him on the bench, like, it's good to at least give him a chance in the preseason to shoot his way and play his way out of it, but we'll see. Sarah, I think Ayton's offense is going to start looking impressive when Luka and LeBron are facilitating for him. 100% agree. I think work in progress with him and Austin, and that's an area that I think Austin needs to get better at, but also they just need to work on their timing. But I think with Luka, it's going to be like we saw what he did with Jackson last year. With Ayton, who's a better roller, better finisher, better hands, it's going to be at a different level. Connor Phillips, if Vando's defense maintains at the level we saw tonight, do you think he will play a bigger role in the rotation than you initially thought? Yes, I think so. I still think the offensive end is going to limit. Like, I could see him cracking 20 minutes tonight or even, 22, 23. I just think that there's a real, it depends how you want to characterize him in terms of position, but I assume that the Lakers are going to use him either as like a wing stopper or a point of attack guy, and probably more of a 1 through 3 defender. It sounds like JJ wants to do. There just are not many. I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd be happy to change this like viewpoint. But if you go through most of the top, like, pick your top 8 to 10 teams in the league, wherever you want to draw that line, how many high-level rotation players have the same level of offensive limit? High-level perimeter rotation players, to be clear, have the same level of offensive limitations as Vando. It's very few, if any. Again, if we're putting the Lakers in the top 8 to 10 teams in the league, which I would do, if you go through OKC and Minnesota and Denver and Houston and New York and Cleveland and Orlando, like, there are not very many perimeter guys who are statistically minuses at the rim, in the mid-range, like at all 3 levels, at the rim, in the mid-range, and behind the 3-point line. That's just, it's hard to play a player against really good teams that has that type of offensive limitations. Like, that's just been the issue with Vando, is he's very clearly a one-way player, and they're trying to work on him being more like a 1.5-way player, but it was not an encouraging preseason debut in that regard, I would say. Clearly defensively, though, like, I think he's too good. Like, he's too good defensively, and this team doesn't have enough defensive talent to the point where I do think he'll probably play more than I was previously projecting, because I didn't know where he was at defensively. And now that we saw it, and now that we've heard how they view it, I think his role will be bigger. I was expecting more in like the 14, 15 minute range. I think he could bump up to 20 to 22. I don't think it goes much higher than that unless there's an injury. Mac Roblox 94. It looks like Jackson Hayes improved that dunk though on Booker. The dunk was incredible. It's the play of the game, and Jackson is one of the best finishers in the league, and he gets to a level in the elevator that very few can get, and that was also on Booker, who's one of I don't know, top 20-ish player in the league. So that was an impressive play. I thought there was a mixed bag with Jackson. I did like some of the rim protection. I did not like some of the cheap fouls that he just can't help himself with, and then the complaining to the refs. And I think that stuff needs to be better. But he did draw up several fouls and get to the free throw line a bit. And again, the rim protection was better. Hey, Chinani, thank you for the super chat. DK continues to struggle. It's been like this since the trade last season. Preseason is the only chance to prove himself. If he doesn't perform, trade him. The one issue with this, although this is I guess the sunk cost fallacy, is that if he doesn't perform well in the preseason, his trade value is really just going to be in the gutter, and it's going to be hard to trade him, and you're really just selling low on him. Ideally, you could build it back up, and then you trade him with it rehabbed a little bit. But it did not get higher after this game, right? I don't know if it could get much lower than it currently is compared to where it used to be, but yeah, it was not a good one. Daily meditation. Ayton's best season was with CP3. Yeah. And now he's got, very few players have ever been on CP3's level as a pick and roll practitioner, but I think Luka is his own, they're so different because CP3 is always more, he's like a pure point guard who is looking to set up the roll guy or the pick, find the big or get to his little midi. With Luka, he could do so many things. He's bigger, he's more skilled and talented and gifted overall, especially as a scorer. But yeah, I want to see the Luka Ayton pick and roll. Long story short. King Carter, do you feel part of the reason the front office thinks very highly of Rui is the Japanese market booming in LA, coupled with his friendship with Luka? I don't think that doesn't play any role whatsoever, but I don't think they're going to keep that important of a piece and that important of a cap slot, because Rui's the Lakers' third highest paid player. That maybe doesn't get talked about enough, but it goes LeBron, Luka, Rui. That is the Lakers cap sheet right now. So I think that's probably an ancillary benefit to having Rui. And I actually think between the two, him having a good relationship with Luka probably matters more, because if you have a good relationship with a star player, you are less likely to be traded. That's just how these things work. So that can help. And that also, I think, impacted to some extent Markieff Morris staying on the roster last year. He had a good relationship with LeBron and Luka, and then also Maxi Kleber coming over with Luka, although Luka wasn't consulted on that. But them also keeping Maxi, I think partly to some extent has to do with he has a good relationship with Luka. So I think that actually carries more weight than the market. But I'm sure that you can't deny that that's not a benefit. John Gist, Luka being more skilled than CP3 is kind of subjective. Yeah, it's subjective. And I've covered, I covered prime CP3, and he was, I thought for stretches in New Orleans and with the Clippers, he was arguably the third best player in the league at times, behind just LeBron and KD. So you're not going to find many people who are higher on CP3 than me. But it's just Luka can do more because of the size. That's just what it comes down to. But in terms of I guess pound for pound, maybe you could argue CP3. I don't know. It's obviously Luka is more of a skilled scorer. I don't think that's debatable. In terms of passing in their prime, that's you could go either way probably with that. But I think overall Luka has more options. If we're treating this almost like a video game, like a first person video game, and you have all your pick and roll options with scoring and with passing, Luka's menu is just deeper. Is the buttons on the screen, there's just more with Luka. Adam, can RJ Davis get a two-way? Look, with the way he played today, you gotta at least think about it, I think the biggest concern with him is he's 6 feet, and he really looked like I haven't seen him yet in person. I wasn't at the game tonight, but he looked even smaller than that. He looked probably like 5'10", 5'11". So there's just a limitation to how, like, you have to be so good offensively to offset being that small. That's probably the biggest thing, but that's more so like an NBA conversation. I think in terms of him being with South Bay or him having a potential two-way role, I think like that was a really impressive debut for him to make a case to be a two-way player. Mac Roblox 94. What if the Lakers did it? Thank you for the super chat. What if the Lakers did a trade with the Kings? Maybe seek out Keon Ellis, Malik Monk, or Keegan Murray, or all of them. This has been a popular one in the chat, and among these three, my preference would be Keon Ellis, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk. Obviously, Keegan Murray is a better player than Keon Ellis, but just in terms of cost, I think Keon would be much more attainable and a much lower cost than Keegan. Malik, I think the only way I would entertain Malik if I'm the Lakers is if you're moving Austin, and let's say you're moving Austin for Herb Jones or something like that. Then you want to replace, like, and then that guy starts, and then now you need to replace Austin's offense to some extent. So you go out and get a Malik Monk to be your sixth man. Then that's a different conversation. But if you're just keeping the same group, I don't think you can play Austin, Malik Monk, Luka, and LeBron together. That's just going to be too problematic on the perimeter defensively. And I don't think they just have enough collective perimeter talent defensively to figure out a way to put someone like Monk, who's a pretty limited defender, into the rotation. So I'm pretty out on Monk with the current group. But if you're just adding an Ellis or a Keegan Murray, yeah, sign me up. Harry Chinani, chances, thank you for the super chat, chances of Luka winning MVP and AR being an all-star. I think Luka at worst has the third best odds to win MVP. I think the only thing that could potentially hold him back would just be the Lakers record of, if the Lakers are a 5 or 6 seed, let's just say they deal with injuries or whatever, like Luka could put up otherworldly numbers, but it will probably be similar to 2024 where he averaged 34, 9, and 10, and he still didn't win MVP. So I expect Denver and OKC to be the two best seeds in the West. OKC for sure, Denver likely. They've basically been a 50-win team every year. They're relatively healthy over the last few years. So I think to be clear, I think Shea, Jokic, and Luka are the three guys that are likely. Like if I had to pick any three players in the league to bet my life on, and I could only pick three, and it has to be one of those guys, it's obviously Jokic, Shea, and Luka. I don't think Milwaukee's going to be good enough for Giannis to win. So people like narratives. We got the physical transformation, the revenge season, skinny Luka, all that stuff going. He's the new face of the Lakers, passing of the torch from LeBron to Luka. I think there's a lot of narrative things in his favor, in addition to just him being a top 3 or 4 player in the world and likely having an insane season statistically. But I would tentatively probably put him third if I was setting the line, just because I just think Jokic and Shea are I think those teams' floors are higher than the Lakers' floor, and I see more scenarios in which those guys are 50+ win seasons, and that typically leads to MVP success. But Luka, I think, like outside of those two, by far has the best odds of winning MVP. AR being an all-star, I think it's going to be tough. The West is just so loaded. I think going through, like, OKC is going to have 2 to 3 all-stars. Denver likely just 1. Houston will have 1 to 2 all-stars, maybe 3, depending on what happens with Thompson. You just go down the list, and it's that I just mentioned 3 teams, and that's like potentially 7 or 8 all-stars off of 3 teams. Ant is going to be in the mix, like Steph, like the Wemby right there. That's 11 guys potentially. So I think the West is too deep for Austin to make the. If he was in the East, I think he could have kind of similar to like a Tyler Hero season where he's an all-star. But I think as constructed, unless they really load manage LeBron or he suffers an injury, I don't I just think Austin, I could see him being like an honorable mention, but I don't see top 12. Daily meditation, Luka and Braun will be an all-star. Yeah, I agree. I expect both of them, and they'll probably be starters too. Generational hater narrative should have nothing to do with MVP vote whatsoever. It should be about how the players perform on the basketball court. Sucks how we have biased media members voting on these things. I agree. I think the most egregious one. Well, actually, I'm not going to go down this road. I'm not going to go down the road of some of the more egregious ones, but I think there are some clear MVP narratives that if you just go through last like 10, 15 years, I think there's a couple of MVPs that clearly were narrative based. Glenn S, Late Night Gang, what's up? What's up, Glenn? Welcome. All right, I'm going to go about 10-ish more minutes here, and then I will wrap. I'll try to stick to 10. Connor Phillips, Embiid stealing an MVP from Jokic is why Jokic stole Luka's MVP the year after. There's some truth to this. I had a vote the Embiid year, and I voted for Jokic, and I thought he was clearly. I mean, it became that really became a narrative thing because then it became more than some the terms of the voting were kind of set. I'll just leave it at that. And then it was kind of like, but I was just like, Jokic is the best player. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Do you plan to travel for road games this season? Yes. I said it earlier. I was actually going to be there tonight, and then I got word that Luka wasn't going to be there. So I decided to cancel, get a refund, and audible to just watching the game from home. And the money, like I've already started to look into travel, and I have several road games that as of right now, it's looking like maybe 8 to 10, but might push that up depending on how things are going with the channel and show and whatnot. But definitely, I think San Francisco will be at both games. Boston will be there. New York, both games. Miami. Yes, I am picking some of my favorite cities to go to, but also some of the biggest games of the season on the road. Probably we'll go to Sacramento, the first one, which is the first road game of the season, and then figuring out maybe a Denver, maybe a Dallas, trying to figure out what makes sense. Connor Phillips, I'm sure your family will appreciate having you home more. Yeah, I think so. I'll be able to see my son more. I'll definitely see my wife more. I'll probably drive her crazy more, but you might have to ask her about that one. Rip Van Winkle, Embiid didn't steal anything. He deserved it. He certainly deserved it. Like I think he had an MVP caliber season. I still think Jokic had a better season, and it reminds me of the Derrick Rose MVP, where that one, in my opinion, was partly narrative based because people were so against LeBron because that was right after the decision. And then in that one, at least they faced up in the playoffs. So you had a direct comparison of who was better and who was the MVP or whatever. And LeBron outplayed him. And I think that made that one age not as well. With Embiid, I think it was just a playoff performance compared to Jokic's. That was the season Jokic went on to win the championship and finals MVP. And I think people had I think it was kind of a conversation. And then after that, it was like, well, it was sort of like Chris Paul, Darren Williams back in the day. But yeah. Colby asks Cleveland in case it's LeBron's last year. I don't think it's LeBron's last year. I think LeBron's going to announce his last year before whenever that is. I think he's playing at least one more season. Rip Van Winkle, most anticipated regular season game. I'll give you two answers, and I've shared these before. They're both against OKC because I still think the West and the league runs through OKC until proven otherwise. November 12th at OKC. I think it's the Lakers' first like real test of the season. That's about a month in, a little less than a month in. But I think like their schedule is relatively easy, at least by like previous starts to the season. And that's, I think, kicks off a pretty tough stretch. And then late in the season, they play OKC actually twice, April 2nd and April 7th. But the April 7th one, fourth to last game of the season. And I think that's going to be a big game just in like barometer sense, measuring stick, where the Lakers at compared to OKC, who theoretically will be 60 plus wins, going for the title defense. And the Lakers will likely be fighting for seeding, probably home court advantage or just the pecking order, with seeding. So I think that's going to be a really big game, really big couple of games. So I would say really the OKC matchups, because they just won 68 games. They won the title. They had one of the best net differentials of all time. They look like a budding dynasty right now. And I think how the Lakers fare against them, whether they play them in round 1 or round 2 or round 3, I think they're probably going through OKC at some point, and I want to see what that looks like. Ken Carter, would you do a Rui for Obi Toppin trade? No, I find Obi Toppin a little overrated. I like him in his bench role with Indiana, but I think Rui can start in certain contexts. Despite me thinking Rui should come off the bench for Marcus Smart, I actually do think there are certain teams and situations Rui makes a lot of sense to start in. I don't think the Lakers have the requisite defensive talent to start Rui, but I think Rui's overall better than King Carter. Glenn says, saving my money for my Buha Brate subscription. Yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah, I know that one he's referencing the tier 3 price, which is, let's say, it is a high price for that tier. I wanted to set it so it wasn't a tier that got oversaturated and it became something that I just couldn't do. But that tier, the big perk is we're going to be doing a monthly hangout where we just shoot the shit for like an hour or so. Knowing me, we'll go over. But yeah, that I got the idea from doing the survey a couple months ago and then having a hangout with the survey people. And it just felt like if I could do it in like a small group, it would be fun to hang out on video and talk to people, answer their questions. So that's what we're doing. Kane Carter, Jovan, take me back to your reaction when the LeBron decision in 2010 happened. Where were you? What were your thoughts? Also, what were your memories from Linsanity? 2010. So I was actually at some like art thing with my mom, and I was really upset because I wanted to be home to watch the decision. So I was following it on Twitter, and like, I don't think I was live streaming it because I don't even think that was really a thing back then, but I was getting like video updates on it. And I think I ended up finding a way to watch it on my phone, or it might have been on, I don't remember exactly where I was watching it, but I did get to watch it live ultimately. And I was as in shock as anybody. I will say that Stephen A. Smith and I forget who else were on the Miami part, and they called that. So that was a big decision. I will always, like, I get the backlash to some extent. I think doing a show to leave and break up with your then I guess now like ex-girlfriend at the time, technically, right? You're breaking up publicly. It's not the best thing to do, but he did raise, I believe, like $2 million for a children's foundation. He was a 25-year-old with, like, if that's the worst thing LeBron's done in his career in the public eye, being in the public eye for 25 years, I think that's a pretty good, like, worst thing to do. So I've always thought that the reaction to the decision was a bit overblown, but yeah, I think it gave LeBron his villain arc that he needed to get over the hump and win a championship, won 4. And Linsanity, I think I was so I went to the Sloan conference in Boston, the MIT Sports Sloan conference back, I think it was like during the peak of Linsanity. So I think he might've played in Boston around that time. So like it was kind of crazy, just the vibes with that. And I was talking to NBA people at the time, and everyone was just in shock about what was happening with that situation. Like, we've just never seen, he ended up being like a solid role player, but we've never seen a player go on a run like that. That was clearly not a star, but just had this out of body experience where he was dropping 30 plus at any given night. And he had the big game against Kobe and the Lakers, and just so many, like the game winners, and just he had this out of body experience, and it's really something. We've never seen it before. Philip Pass, I love LeBron, but I thought it was cheesy. Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying it's inscrutable. Like I think you can have your criticism of it. I just think, for example, I think it's very different than what Kevin Durant did, which was going to a 73-win team that just beat you in the playoffs. And because even when people say, like, yes, they teamed up, right? But because they teamed up and because of the nature of the cap situation, that first, like, you go back and actually look at the Heat roster the first year, it was a god awful roster. Like, that was they did not have any depth and really any money to do anything with that group. And they were playing like Eric Dampier and Zydrunas Ilgauskas and Mike Bibby. And it was just not a good, like, all those guys. It was basically like the 2021-22 Lakers. Just they had a third star instead of two. Although I guess that team technically had Russ, but yeah. John Zering, pound that like button, people. Yes, I can't see the likes live right now, but let's get those likes up. Rod, were you able to watch the Young Man and a 3-pod with AR, Jake, and Flea? I've not watched it yet. I've seen some clips. I have it actually, like, I have a tab of things I got to do. It's on that tab, but I haven't seen it yet. King Carter, in your eyes, why do you think fans are so split on Wiggins? In my opinion, he's a flat-out better player than Rui in every aspect of the game. Would be the perfect starter, plus has championship pedigree. I think Wiggins has just been a polarizing player ever since he entered the league, and I also think when you're a number one pick and you have certain expectations and you don't live up to those expectations, I think that kind of follows you. There's also been some reporting or just kind of behind-the-scenes stuff with, like, how much does he actually love basketball, which I think maybe earlier in his career what was fair or valid, but I thought after what he did in Golden State, that put that to rest. And that 2022 title and just how important he was. Like, there were stretches of that playoff run, he was their second best player or second most important player, and he defended Luka for, like, I remember watching that series. That was some of the best defense I've ever seen against Luka, and I don't think he's defended quite like. That was I also think, like, his best stretch of his career up to this point. So he hasn't quite been at the same level, but I agree with you and with most of what you said. I don't think he's better than Rui at every aspect of the game. I think Rui's probably a better cutter, though I do think Wiggins is a respectable cutter as well. Rui's a better catch and shoot, spot up. Like, he's a better 3-point shooter overall than Wiggins, but I think Wiggins is much better at creating his own shot. He's much better attacking closeouts. He's a more athletic player. I think he's a better finisher around the basket, more dynamic finisher around the basket. And I mean, he just averaged 18 last year. But defensively, I think there's a versatility there. And I retweeted this and actually I'll pull this up just for argument's sake, but I thought this was really good from Cranjis earlier in the day. I will show you guys. This to me is one of the most, like, the biggest things in Marcus Smart's favor in terms of why he should start. But you have this graphic here from Cranjis, and this is by the B-Ball Index. The B-Ball Index defensive roles, and the green is like the ideal fit for each player, and the red is the least ideal fit, and then yellow is like they can kind of do it. But you see, for point of attack and wing stopper, the Lakers have one player who could do both of those things, and that's Smart, and that's it. Vando is wing stopper and helper. He has a yellow and point of attack, and I thought tonight, when he can just guard a guy straight up, he can do it. When he has to navigate, when it's a pick and roll situation, I think he's less effective and can struggle. So I think he's kind of more of like a greenish yellow than just a yellow, but I do think that's something. Smart is a much better screen navigator than Vando. So I just think, like, looking at Rui here, wing stopper and helper, well, like, the wing stopper part is nice, and I think he's improved in that regard, But Rui is not a point of attack guy. And now you're forcing Austin to be a point of attack guy. And as you see here, Austin is a yellow in point of attack. And this is a very basic, rudimentary breakdown in terms of just color coding it red, green, yellow to simplify it so it's easier to digest. But I pretty much agree with every breakdown here of each player. I might, I don't know if I viewed, I'll say like Hayes to me is more of a yellow as an anchor big versus a green. Like I might nitpick a couple of these things, but I think this is largely in line with what guys are good at and what they're bad at. And I think the Lakers need both a wing stopper and a point of attack guy in the starting group. And only one player on this roster does that at a green level and also does chasing at a green level. So ideally you have Smart as your point of attack or wing stopper, depending on whoever's the best opposing scorer in that starting group. And then you have Austin as the chaser. And then you have ideally LeBron and Luka both as helpers, and then Ayton as an anchor big or a mobile big, depending on the matchup. So I think this is a pretty good breakdown, but that was in reference to the Wiggins thing of like, I think Wiggins probably would be similar to Smart. Maybe I'm not quite as familiar with his chasing, but I think he would probably rate out similarly to Smart. And that is where I think Wiggins would bring a lot of value and more value than Rui on the defensive end. Let's get back into the chat and then go on 5 more minutes here. Craig Osterberg says Lakers need shooting. Yeah, I mean this is the this is the catch with all this, right? Like they have a bunch of imperfect options. Like Smart is not the level of shooter you want, and I think the shot selection and the turnovers can be issues. He's also injury prone. Rui is not the level of defender you want, I think, either as a wing stopper or a point of attack guy, and can't really slide down and guard like secondary guards. So Rui just has some defensive limitations. I think offensively, he's as close to a perfect fit as you can get next to Luka, LeBron, and Austin. And maybe that just makes him the full-time starter who plays 30 plus minutes, and like Rui's the answer. But you are really, I think, limiting your defensive ceiling if you're going with Austin, Luka, LeBron, Rui, Ayton. I just don't see a world in which that team against competitive teams is like a good defense. I just do not see that universe. Vando is too limited offensively. We know how good he is defensively, but far too limited offensively. LaRavia, I don't know, is good enough on either end to ideally check that starting box, though we'll continue to monitor that. Gabe's too small, not consistent enough as a shooter. Then, Wiggins, I don't think is good enough of a shooter as you probably want. So yeah, I mean, I don't know who that perfect player is, but they ideally need someone who can defend at like a Smart Vando level, but also maybe not score at a Rui level, but at least shoot at a Rui level. And that's just a tough player to find. Ken Carter, hot take, shooting is important, but two-way ability in today's game means so much more than pure shooting. Would you rather have a team full of OG Anunobys or Kyle Korvers? Think about that. 100% OG Anunobys. Philip Pass, do we have one truly two-way player? Seems like a bunch of 1.5-way players. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends like how we classify, because I think Jake honestly might be the closest in terms of, I think he's probably a net positive on both sides of the ball, but ideally when we're talking about a two-way guy, you're probably wanting a guy who's like 75th to 80th percentile on both sides of the ball. And I don't know if Jake, I don't know where he's at, like where I would put him yet in percent. Like I'll say I would not put him in the 75th or 80th percentile defensively. Is he there offensively? Probably not, based on what we've seen. So I think he's an above average offensive player and an above average defender, but he might be closer to that 60th percentile or whatever. So yeah, I guess like if you're saying like clear two-way players, I don't know that they have even one. I guess LeBron when he's locked in defensively, and even LeBron's like floor defensively is pretty high. So I guess LeBron technically, but there are nights when he takes stretches off, possessions off, games off. I mean, he's taken games off before. So I mean, this is one of the biggest concerns with the roster still. Hotline Blink, sadly, it's Ayton. Yeah, I mean, Ayton's in the mix. Smart's in the mix, depending on what you get from the shooting with him offensively. It's not Vando. I don't think Rui is good enough defensively. Like, Rui's close too, but I think his like, Rui to me is a 45 to 55 guy defensively, where there are nights and matchups he's slightly below average. There's nights he's about average. There's nights he's slightly above average. Like, that's his range to me. So yeah, I mean, but I don't think there's anybody you can definitively say is like a clear, like, we'll even say like B on both sides of the ball. I don't know. It's a relative scale though too. So Bino wondering if the offensive gap versus Smart or LaRavia closes, considering Rui has had the advantage of being wide open since all defensive attention is on Luka, Braun, and AR. That's partly like, again, I people know where I stand with the whole Smart versus Rui thing, and I do think LaRavia maybe ends up being an interesting middle option. I think my contention would be, I think there's actually a bigger gap and probably a bigger impact with Smart versus Rui on the defensive end than the offensive end, because I think, and now shout out the LFR pod, was just listening to, they had a nice fit starter debate, and it was Mike Garcia and Raj debating Pete and Darius are in the Smart camp. Mike and Raj are in the Rui camp. And one thing that stood out, and sometimes when you're listening to a pod, you just want to like insert it, especially now that like I've talked, I know all those guys, I've had them all on the pod, like, and I wanted to insert myself. Like, they both stated their cases for Rui, and not once did either of them mention defense. And I was like, this is the issue with starting Rui, is that you guys are making these cases, which they were sound cases, smart cases, especially like factoring in he wants to start, the continuity, the cutting, the 3-point shooting, the offensive ceiling. Like, I get all those things, but there was not once a mention of defense. And I'm like, if you look at, if we are creating a perfect player for that starting group, they need to have a certain level of defense that I just don't think Rui has. Like, if we are saying the locks are Ayton, LeBron, Luka, and Austin, which I believe those are 4 of the locks. I believe all 4 of those guys are playing are starting. The 5th guy needs to be like, ideally, like a freak, crazy athlete defender who plays with a lot of, like, honestly, Vando's defense would be perfect. It's just the offensive end. I really have a tough time seeing JJ having him leapfrog Rui, Jake, and Marcus in the starting battle. Maybe it happens in the preseason, but I would be pretty surprised by that. So I think that, like, to me, there's a bigger gap between the two on defense than there is on offense. Like, yes, Rui's a better cutter than Smart, and Rui's a better shooter than Smart, but Smart's actual like points per game and stuff has been similar to Rui throughout most of his career. He's a better ball handler, better passer. I think that's an underrated part of adding Smart to the starting group. So I actually think they're much closer offensively, despite Smart's turnovers and shooting inefficiency, than they are defensively. I don't think it's close, really at all. Like, Smart has graded out as a really, really good defender despite being injured and being on crappy teams. Jake from State Farm, listening to Buha at 2 times speed. Now that I caught up, he sounds drunk. I probably sound drunk at 2 times speed too. All right. About to wrap here unless we have any final questions. Colby S30, have you seen One Battle After Another? Yes, I really enjoyed it. I think it's right there with Sinners for best movie of the year. I'm actually going to see it again tomorrow. I saw it with a buddy, and then I'm going to see it with my wife tomorrow. So, Bowen, check the YouTube description. My Discord link is in there. I mean, it should just be Buha's block if you search it, but yeah. I like this one from Connor, but we'll end on this one. Anything specific you want to see in the next preseason game? Yes, I would like to see in general some of the things that JJ has been talking about consistently, like championship habits, championship shape, championship communication. I want to see that stuff come to life. And it doesn't matter. Like, again, process over results. The Lakers could play Golden State and have the same group and lose by 20. And if they do those things that, like, to me, it was more so the process is what I had the issue with. The result, I expected them to lose this game once I saw who was out. I thought it would be more competitive, but I would like to see the running, getting out, the hit-aheads, playing with a certain pace offensively, getting out in transition, getting back. If you miss a shot, turnover, get back in transition. Defensively, got to figure out what they're doing off the ball with a lot of their communication and switching and coverages. I thought they had too many just easy, just obvious mistakes that you got to clean up. I think that the fight on the glass needs to be better. Offensively, I think this is just so far away from like what they're going to be when they add in Luka and LeBron that I would like to see Austin get off the ball quicker. I would like to see the Austin Ayton pick and roll a little bit more, and also that chemistry continue to build. Offensively, it's just more so like cleaning stuff up and being a little bit more intentional, maybe a little bit more organized on that end. But I think there are just limitations. Like I said, you're taking away 4 of their 5 best ball handlers with who's out right now. So I expect the offense to take a big hit. But that side I'm less concerned with. It's the defensive side. It's the communication. It's the running. They just got outran and out executed and out hustled. And I would like to see some just kind of basic improvement, honestly, in the process with this group. And a lot of stuff they talked about all week translating over. So again, if they lose by 20, but the process, if they lose by 20 on Sunday, but the process is better and there's some tangible things of like, okay, they cleaned up the turnovers, they cleaned up the transition defense, they're not mixing up their off-ball coverages. Like, if that stuff's cleaned up and they still lose, then they lose, and I'm happier with the process. But tonight, people are going to focus on the result. The result didn't ultimately matter, although I thought it should have been more competitive. But it was really the process of like, there were just so many things I didn't like or were disappointed with that, again, though, opener, it was a stinker. We'll see how they bounce back on Sunday. But that'll do it. Michael D says, night, Jovan. Night, Michael. Night to the late night gang. Appreciate you all for rocking with me for almost an hour and a half. I'll be back on Sunday after Lakers Warriors. So I'll be covering that one from home as well. I'm also dropping 3 takeaways from every game, basically a condensed version of the 3 takeaways that I talk about after the game. Just getting out a quick like minute and a half video for you guys, just to have something to digest quickly and then get into the post-game lives. But for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. Let's get those likes up. Let's get those subs up on the road to 50K before the end of the calendar year. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Enjoy your weekend.